Wednesday, July 2 edition of PFT PM. Had to do a little wardrobe change before I got started. I'm going to bust through the fourth wall here and explain that there's a shadow that comes from my laptop onto my shirt. So if it's a light colored top, I see the shadow, even though I don't have the camera up. I don't have the image up while I'm doing it. I've got my sheet that I use to tell me what to talk about next. It bothers me to know it's there. So I had to ditch what I had on, and it's Satrial's Friday on a Wednesday, tracksuit time, run PFT, whatever we want to call it. We're breaking it out early. There's no Friday this week. So doing it today, maybe a different one tomorrow. I got 3 of them now, and I got to buy some more. Michael Hawley and I have a competition going back and forth who can get the nicest Adidas tracksuit. He's got a pretty nice one in the hopper for when PFT Live returns, and we are returning in just 26 days. The hiatus is flying by as it always does. Okay, let's get to it. Not a lot going on today, but there's always something going on, even when it's low tide for the National Football League. And the news that came out yesterday, just one day after the Dolphins sent tight end Jonnu Smith to the Pittsburgh Steelers due to what appeared to be a lingering impasse over how much he was going to be paid moving forward. He wasn't going to play this year for $4 million. And look, my criticism of the Dolphins here is very simple. Normally functioning football operations do not make these kinds of moves in June and July. They make them in March and April. If you know you have an issue with Jonnu Smith, trade him before the start of the league year. Have the deal ready to go. As soon as 4 p.m. Eastern rolls around on the first day of the league year, boom, he's gone. And then you've got his replacement lined up. Or worst case scenario, you draft a guy. You don't go out scrounging for veteran tight ends in late June, because what you get is a guy who retired a year ago and didn't play, and for all we know, he doesn't really want to play. I don't know that Darren Waller's head and heart is in the game. I'm not pinning my hopes at the tight end position to Darren Waller after he's been out of football for a full year. This isn't Rob Gronkowski deciding to come back and team up with Tom Brady and win a Super Bowl. This is a guy who fell out of love with the sport. He had something else he wanted to do, and now he's in love with the sport again. How in love with the sport is he? Will he stay healthy? What's he going to do after a year off? A lot of factors, a lot of issues. And the point is this. If the Dolphins had done this when a normally functioning football team would do it in March, the alternative to Jonnu Smith would not have been Darren Waller. Darren Waller was break glass in event of emergency. Darren Waller is who can we find? Who can we get? What can we do? Oh, he wants to come back and play? Well, let's just do that. It'll be cheap from a pay and from a draft pick compensation standpoint. It's not a way to run a successful football team. Making these moves now, you need your new players to be around for the offseason program. Think about that. Minkah Fitzpatrick arrives via trade from the Steelers after the offseason program. Darren Waller arrives via retirement and trade with the Giants after the offseason program. They're getting their feet wet in Miami when training camp begins. And I know Minkah Fitzpatrick was there before, but it's all different now. The one thing has been the same for the Dolphins since Stephen Ross bought the team, and really 9-10 years before that, they haven't won a playoff game. This does not strike me as a team that is suddenly going to end a 25-year streak of playoff futility. Yeah, they've gotten there a few times. They can't win when they get there. I don't think this team gets there. I think this team struggles with the Jets to stay out of the basement in the AFC East. That's what I think. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, Dolphins. Dolphins fans get mad. Come on. Don't get mad at the people who are pointing out the thing that you don't want to think about, because that's how it works. Fans get mad when we point out the things they'd rather not think about. They would rather be blissfully ignorant of the flaws in the team that they love, because what other choice do they have? They want to go through July and August feeling like, hey, it could work out. They don't want to be told, you know, deep down, this isn't going to work out. You know. Dolphins fans, you know. Now, hey, none of us knows how a year is going to play out. There have been teams in recent years that I thought had no chance to make it to the playoffs, and they make it. A lot of things can go well. If Tua plays all 17 games, could go well. Hey, if Darren Waller shows up and plays as well as he ever has, could go well. If Tyreek Hill isn't injured all year long like he was last year, even though they hit it for most of the season. The wrist injury could go well. Jalen Waddle, still a great player, could go well. A lot of things could go well, but feels like you need a lot of things to go well. A lot of things need to line up just right for the Miami Dolphins this year. And if I'm picking one or the other, I think it's a continuation of what we've seen, all this talk of culture change. It just feels like trying to change a tire on a moving car, and it's not going to work. Change the tire before you leave the garage in March. Too much happening. Dolphins making too many changes to the roster in late June and early July. I don't think that bodes well. We'll see. Speaking of dysfunction, I wrote something yesterday about the ongoing impasse with the Bengals and pass rusher Shemar Stewart, the 17th overall pick in the 2025 draft. I believe, now I don't know because at any point this impasse could be ended. I believe, based upon what I know, that this isn't getting done until training camp opens, if then. And remember, the Bengals and Stewart are stuck on some very esoteric language in his contract as a first-round pick. First-round picks get fully guaranteed deals. There is language in these contracts that will void the guarantees. If you commit a default, guaranteed void. The language the Bengals had been using limits the default to the year in which it happens. The guarantees void in the year when the player does the thing that triggers the default. They want to change that language now, as to Stewart, to wipe out all future guarantees. And yes, other teams use that language, but the Bengals haven't. And the Bengals are introducing it with the guy who was the 17th overall pick, when last year they used their prior language with the guy who was the 18th overall pick. I mean, one of the basic arguments is if you're going to roll out this new language, do it in a year when you're drafting lower than the guy who got it last year. If you're drafting lower, if the guy is slotted lower, it's easier to make the argument that we're making a unilateral change. Stewart was drafted higher than Amarius Mims, and they want to use more restrictive default language in the contract, and he said no. The point we made yesterday, this didn't go off the rails in the offseason program because of that default language. The real issue as to why Stewart wasn't on the field for the offseason program was the Bengals' participation agreement. The very short and sweet and simple document that says to the player, hey, in exchange for you showing up and practicing when you don't have a contract, when you're not employed by the team, we promise that if you get injured, we will pay you the same contract you would have gotten. It'll be as if the injury didn't happen. You'll still get the contract. And the closer the language is to that very basic quid pro quo, hey, don't worry. We know you don't have a contract. We know the contract gives you 4 years fully guaranteed. What we'll do is we'll promise with this piece of paper that if you show up in practice, you'll still get your contract. It'll be as if the injury never happened. I've seen the participation agreement that the Bengals proposed to Stewart, and I've seen at least one other team's, and there are differences. And there's enough weasel room in the Bengals deal to make it something I wouldn't advise a client to sign. Hell, I wouldn't advise a client to sign the other one that I saw. I wouldn't advise a client to sign any participation agreement. Just give me the freaking contract. You want me to act like an employee? Treat me like an employee. Give me my contract. And that's what the Bengals didn't do because they reached an impasse. And there were other issues that the Bengals yielded on, like the payment of, I think, training camp roster bonuses in future years, the amounts, the specific length of a suspension for an on-field incident that would trigger a default. There was some haggling about that the Bengals yielded on, but they won't yield on this language in the contract about the voiding of guaranteed money. They won't go with what they used last year for Amarius Mims and what they used for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Shemar Stewart is the test case. Now, it'd be interesting to see if Trey Hendrickson gets a deal. Does he have the Mims, Chase, Higgins default language, or do they foist upon Hendrickson the language they're trying to foist upon Stewart? And there's a strange hypocrisy to all of this, because I'm told that when the participation agreement was being negotiated and Stewart said to the Bengals, look, I want greater protection here. The response was, well, Amarius Mims signed this deal last year, so it wouldn't be fair to change it now. Well, okay, fine. Then give Stewart the deal that Mims signed as it relates to default language. And all of this, it's just stupid, right? You either want to get your guys on the field and get ready to win football games, or you're going to get caught up in language that ultimately won't mean a thing. Chances are it's not going to mean jack diddly squat. It's about power. It's about you work for us and we tell you what the rules are and you sign this. You just shut up and play football. We don't want to hear any back talk. We don't want to hear any pushback. We just want you to sign the document and go to work. That's the attitude. Screw that. It's why the Bengals can't get to their full potential. Even with Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase and good players on both sides of the ball, it's why they didn't get to the playoffs last year. It's not a bright line, but it's a dotted line. The stubbornness with Ja'Marr Chase, the games they played with the structure of his contract, the failure to get him signed before week one. He wasn't involved in training camp. He wasn't ready for week one. He didn't even know he was going to play until 90 minutes before kickoff. They lose to the Patriots, who otherwise went 3-13. And that one game, change that one game, and they're in the hunt for another Super Bowl appearance and maybe their first ever Super Bowl win. It's all on the organization. Oh, you're being unfair to the Bengals. Oh, do you hate the Bengals? Hey, Bengals fans, you should be glad somebody's saying this. You should be glad somebody's shaming them, or at least trying to, into changing their ways. You should want them to behave like a normal football team. Same as Dolphins fans. Instead of getting pissed off that I'm saying it's dysfunctional to make these kinds of moves in late June and early July, the response should be yes. Tell them. Change. They won't listen to us. They won't listen to anybody. Dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things. And they stay dysfunctional until they have a true epiphany. For the Bengals, the epiphany was limited. Hey, we got a great quarterback who's from Ohio. We're going to have to pay him. We don't really want to pay him. We're going to have to pay him. And we're probably going to have to take care of some of his buddies. And Higgins and Chase did the Bengals a favor. They made it cheaper. Hendrickson isn't doing it. And Stewart, a different issue altogether. Am I going to allow them to push me around contractually? And so far, as to the participation agreement and as to his contract, Stewart has said no. And those are qualities that should be applauded, not chastised. There are too many people that let themselves get pushed around. There are too many people who are afraid. We saw it with the collusion case. We still see it. Nobody's saying anything. They're afraid. They're living in fear, residing in their fears instead of doing what is right for them, what is right for others. Shemar Stewart is doing what's right for him and what's right for others. And we shouldn't be saying, oh, this guy doesn't want to win. Oh, this guy's a bust already. No, this guy's got the kind of character, the kind of drive, the kind of courage that you want in your locker room. When there's a team that, doesn't continue to create obstacles for itself through cheapness or, in this case, stubbornness. Because this isn't about money. This is about power. This is about stubbornness. This is about our way or the highway. We'll see if they get it worked out. I don't think it'll get worked out until training camp. And it'll be interesting to see how aggressively Mike Brown is questioned about this when he meets with reporters, as he usually does right when training camp opens. Katie Blackburn, if she meets with reporters, will they push her? Will they press her? Will they get into the details on this? Or will they just parrot whatever the party line is because we can't make waves? We can't upset anyone. We shouldn't say anything that someone doesn't like. Life is easier if we never say anything to which someone might object. On that note of dysfunctional teams and saying things that people might object to, hey, the Cleveland Browns got what they wanted. Congratulations, Browns. You got your $600 million. You got your ticket out of Cleveland to Brook Park. And I know Brook Park is still Cleveland, but it's not Cleveland. It's not downtown Cleveland. Steelers play in sort of downtown Pittsburgh. They're right there. They're right at the Golden Triangle. You can see the city from Acrisure Stadium. It's not like they moved 15 minutes away to one of the suburbs. That would be weird. Based on my own experience living in and around Pittsburgh for my entire life, with a very limited exception, it would be weird if the Steelers built their next stadium in Greensburg or Canonsburg or Bridgeville. That would be weird. Very weird. The Steelers belong in Pittsburgh. The Browns belong in Cleveland. But no. We want to have this fancy new dome stadium We want to host events all year long. We want to make a lot more money than we make by having a place that can only do 10 football games plus events in the summertime because, when it turns cold, we can't have it. Hey, there's only one Final Four a year. All these places want dome stadiums because they want to host a Final Four. Get in line to host the Final Four, people. And the Super Bowl ain't going to happen in Cleveland. Cleveland's not big enough to host a Super Bowl. It would maybe happen if Kansas City gets a dome. It'll definitely happen if Chicago gets a dome. And there's public money supporting it. That's part of the loose trade-off that's done, as we've seen in Minnesota when they get new stadiums. They've had 2 Super Bowls thanks to 2 stadiums, dome stadiums, paid for by the people. Detroit, 2 Super Bowls, 2 stadiums, paid for by the people. Indianapolis got theirs, stadium paid for by the people. Ain't going to happen in Cleveland. It won't. And it's not going to be Cleveland. It's going to be Brook Park. So the Browns got what they wanted. They got the money and they got the ticket out of Cleveland because the Ohio legislature amended the Art Modell law, which used to prevent any relocation of a team in Ohio to anywhere. Elsewhere was the language in the law. Now it only applies if you leave the state. And I still think it'll be hilarious if the Bengals try to move to Columbus one of these days. You can't take that off the bingo card. Knowing what we know of the Bengals, you cannot remove the possibility of the Bengals trying to move to Columbus at some point, or maybe even Dayton. Back to the Browns. There's still an issue here, and the Browns really are kind of putting the cart before the horse. Now, they just assume if the funding mechanism for the $600 million they're getting from the state of Ohio falls through, they'll find something else because the governor had a different plan than what ultimately was used. He wanted to increase taxes on gambling. The House wanted to do a bond issuance to come up with the $600 million. The Senate's idea was to take the cash from the unclaimed funds fund in Ohio. I was trying to think of a better word. Unclaimed funds fund is what we'll go with. So here's how this works. And, if you've got a bank account that you forgot about, if you've got a check that you didn't cash before it voided, there's all sorts of ways that money ends up as an unclaimed fund. And it's there. And it's in this big pot. And it's a lot of money for most states, probably every state. So what they're basically doing is borrowing against that for the stadium projects. The Bengals are going to benefit from this with the Paycor Stadium renovation. The Browns are going to get their $600 million to build their new stadium. There's apparently some legal issues involved here because even though there's not going to be the equivalent of a run on the bank and everyone's going to show up and say, well, I want my property, and then the money's going to be gone. Like it's reasonable to be confident that there will still be $600 million left, even if everyone shows up or most of the people show up and say, I want my funds. It's still the property of those people. And it becomes a constitutional issue, the taking of someone's property. So I expect litigation. And it's possible litigation will be viable. It's possible Ohio's going to have to come up with another way to come up with the $600 million. But the Browns assume it'll happen. And you know what? It probably will happen. It probably will. I think the hardest part in this climate is getting a state or local government to put in any money. Once they've committed to putting in money, it's just a question of finding a way to come up with the cash. So if this door gets slammed shut on the Browns, they'll find another door. They'll get their $600 million and they'll open their stadium in Brook Park. They're already pushing. I mean, you could tell they've been waiting. They had all the social media posts ready to go. Everything celebrating this new era in Browns football and sign up for your season tickets. And this is going to be great. And this is going to be awesome. It's going to be the best this. It's going to be the best that. They're going to have this. They're going to have that. And it puts pressure on others now. Every time you get a new stadium that is better than X number of stadiums because of this and better than all stadiums because of that, that puts pressure on the people who are in the bottom to try to get a renovated stadium or a new stadium. And it just continues. That's why it seems like every 20 or 30 years, every stadium becomes obsolete. It's a hell of a scam. It's a hell of a racket. And you know how I feel about it. And I've evolved over time. I'm a firm believer that people should pay for their own shit. When you have a team that's worth at least $10 billion and you're making millions every year, you should pay for your own stadium. As I've said before, the people that own the grocery store chains, here it's Kroger, they pay for their own stores. I don't remember seeing stories about Kroger trying to shake down the West Virginia government to pay for their store because it caters to the public. Oh, it caters to the public. It's a great thing for the public. You need to have a grocery store. You better pay us. You better pay us to build this grocery store because you need to have a grocery store. These are private industries, and they rely upon people to show up and give them their money. A football stadium is that. And I still think at the end of the day, and there aren't many privately owned stadiums in the NFL, but wouldn't it be great, especially if you have a dome stadium where you can have events all year long and you own it and you run it and you don't have to get into the issues like what the 49ers have had with Santa Clara ever since they opened Levi's Stadium. You don't need those headaches. You buy it, you own it, you run it, you keep the money, you don't have issues with anyone. It's my factory. It's my store. It's my place of business. So I still am fascinated by the reality. You put one of these things on a ballot and the voters say, hell no. The only way to make it happen is to work through the various waters and channels and minefields of a legislature and a governor, a mayor, a county executive, whatever the case may be. But congratulations, Browns. You got what you want. It still may be a little rocky. And, at the end of the day, the Browns are still the Browns. And their football team isn't as competitive as it needs to be. So it's just going to be weird seeing the Browns in a dome. I know that the Browns haven't benefited from the weather advantage because they've stunk all these years. Do we really think the Browns are going to transform into the greatest show on turf when they go into an indoor stadium? Or are they just going to be a bad team in an indoor stadium? Bad teams stay bad. It all traces to ownership. They had their chance in 2012 when the Haslam's bought the team. And I'm sorry, the Haslam's going to be pissed. But your team stinks. And the dysfunction flows from the top down. Like it does with the Jets, like it does with the Dolphins, like it does with the Bengals, even though the Bengals are competitive. See, there are certain teams out there that are successful despite the dysfunction. You're good enough, whether it's players, coaches, whatever, it overcomes the dysfunction. Some would say the Vikings, the 49ers fall in that category. Some would say, many are saying. I haven't reached a final verdict on either or both of those teams. Here's a team that rarely is dysfunctional, but is desperate this year. We've seen it in every move the Steelers have made. I was surprised in the aftermath of the trades that happened on Monday, where they acquired tight end Jonnu Smith and defensive back Jalen Ramsey for defensive back Minkah Fitzpatrick and a late-round pick swap in 2027. Andrew Filipponi of 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. I go on there every Wednesday afternoon. Usually it's 3:30. Today it's going to be a little earlier than that, but we've had that relationship for a long time. And I love to talk Steelers football because I know the Steelers as well, if not better than any team. I didn't know this. The win projections from Vegas, because you can bet on the win totals, the over-under. It's right around their usual 9-8. Big surprise. But when you look at the games one at a time, they're only favored in 6 of their 17 games this year. And look, I know it's all going to change as we get closer to the games, but the idea that going into the season, 17 regular season games where the lines have been attached, the Steelers are only favored to win 6 games. 2 against the Browns, the Jets, the Seahawks, the Colts, and the Dolphins. That's it. 11 other games, Steelers are underdogs. Now, look, in some it's only 1.5 points, but still, for everything they've done, game by game, the bettors aren't believers. And that's with the assumption that TJ Watt is going to be there. The odds didn't change much when Aaron Rodgers joined the team because the expectation that Rodgers was joining the team was baked in to the pre-existing odds. I think all the odds we've seen out there and the betting lines we've seen out there for the Steelers now are premised on TJ Watt being on the team. If he ends up not being on the team, oh boy. Look it up. I think it's 1-11. I think that's their record when he doesn't play. It's too late. It's just like the Dolphins. It's too late to extract TJ Watt from that locker room. If you're going to move on from TJ Watt, you got to do it in March. So you've got the full offseason program. You've got months for the players to come to terms with the fact that one of their most important players isn't going to be there. It's going to be interesting between Watt, Trey Hendrickson, and Michael Parsons. Very interesting. when training camp rolls around. Who gets a deal first? Who gets a deal at all? Will any be traded? Could Watt be traded? When they put out, we have no intention to trade him, that's been the precursor. That's been the kiss of death. No intention to trade becomes actual trade. So we'll see. All right, mailbag time. This Wednesday edition of PFTPM. By the way, we're working on getting a new microphone. Some of you have been complaining about the microphone. The complaints about the microphone have shifted from the blinking lights, which I kind of dig, to the echo or the sound quality. And I mean, sorry, this isn't Dolby surround sound. You're getting content at a slow time when others are taking a vacation, when others are shut down. We're giving you fresh content. So if it comes with an echo or two, I ask that you tolerate it. But we are looking into getting a new microphone. Okay. John Kasich has a question. As more college football players enter the NFL from the NIL/transfer portal, do you foresee more owners considering hiring highly successful college head coaches with the ability to manage and motivate rosters of wealthy teenagers? I'd flip it around. I'd say we're going to see more colleges hiring NFL players, coaches, maybe NFL players to become coaches. That's a trend as well. Hire NFL coaches who know how to deal with guys who are motivated by money. You know, Nick Saban acts like it's a bad thing that the players are motivated by money. The players are providing valuable services. Of course, they should be motivated by money. Anybody who does something that is good enough that someone will pay for should be motivated by that. That is capitalism. That is the American way. There's nothing wrong with it. Whether you're 28, 18, 38, 58, 68, it doesn't matter. Plenty of people younger than 18 make money. Youth entertainers make money. There's nothing wrong with that. It drives me crazy that it's a problem, that the spirit of amateur athleticism is but bullshit. That's just talk to deny people their money. Think of all the time with the Olympics and with college sports. Oh, it's amateur athletes. We can't pay amateurs. You don't want to pay them, and this is a great way to not pay them. So I think over time, you will have college coaches who thrive in this environment who might be more suited to come to the NFL. But I also think NFL coaches might be more attractive to the colleges as they continue to get their sea legs in this new world they're dealing with. You know, Nick Saban, one of his big gripes about coaching the Dolphins, you only get one first-round pick. You go to Alabama, and everything's equal from a money standpoint. You can go charm family members and recruit great players. You can have 10 first-round picks. I guarantee you. Now, look, I don't know this because he's never going to admit it, but I think he got out because he could no longer rig the pre-existing system in his favor. The system changed. His cheese was moved, and he couldn't rig it in his favor anymore, so he got out. Because now it's all about money. And Alabama can't match the Texases of the world, the USCs of the world, the teams that are going to rise up because they've got the money. The money is what's going to drive it, and that's fine because it's all about money. Oh, we don't want college football to be a pro sport. It already is, and it has been for a long time. Eva G., why would the league remove preseason games if they're going to go to 18 regular season games? Why not just prolong the number of weeks of the season in general? Look, they don't like the preseason games. And the commissioner's argument has been, we've had 20 games forever. I remember when I was a kid, there were 6 preseason games and 14 regular season games. I remember watching Sonny Jurgensen on a weeknight in a preseason game in the 70s thinking this is awesome because what the hell else was I going to watch in August when you had 3 channels? But preseason, also a longer preseason was necessary to get the guys in shape because the sport didn't pay enough to allow guys to be professional athletes 12 months out of the year. When football season ended, a lot of them had to go work other jobs. A lot of them weren't in shape, especially because they were drinking and smoking a lot more than they do now. So it's always been 20. The argument 10, 12 years ago from the commissioner was the 4 preseason games stink. Let's take some of the 16 regular season games and make them, an alternative to the preseason games. And 18-2 was around before the concussion epiphany. that forced the NFL to try to reconcile the idea of more football and keeping players safe. So they couldn't do 18-2. They did the baby step to 17-3. The next step is 18-2. And I think the ultimate move is 20-0. I don't know that it happens in my lifetime, but depending upon how old you are, it could happen in yours. No preseason games, 20 games that count, more money, more cash, higher ratings. Games that count do so much better. Now, preseason games, they still do better than other sports. The Hall of Fame game coming up on July 31 in Canton will be there for Lions-Chargers. It will draw a good number as football games that don't count go, as glorified practices go. But there's nothing like regular season football. They want more, greater inventory, more to watch, more on which to bet. And once they exhaust the limit of the number of games they can have, that's when expansion, I think, will become an issue. But that's down the road. DCowboy777. Joey Chestnut is minus 1350 to win Nathan's hot dog contest on July 4. Will you watch the awesomeness? I can detect your bias, D-Cowboy, from your question. Look, I don't want to have big hot dog up my ass, frankly, over the next few days. But I generally believe, and this is my own opinion, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. I think competitive eating is disgusting. I think it's gross. I think it's repugnant. I don't want to watch people eat until they're ready to explode. And maybe it's because I always think when it's time for the hot dog contest of the pie eating contest from Stand By Me. But it is a disgusting act, and it is a sign of gluttony, and it's celebrated. And there are starving kids elsewhere in the world. I mean, I go back to that when I wouldn't finish my dinner. Not that I needed a whole lot of convincing to finish my dinner, but on the rare occasions when there was something left on the plate, I was reminded that there are starving children elsewhere in the world. And my response was, well, go ahead and pack it up and send it to them, which would get me in trouble, but it would usually be worth it. Anyway, I think competitive eating is gross. And I would believe that if NBC televised Nathan's hot dog eating contest, and as far as I know, they do, because I won't watch it. I don't watch it. I've got no interest in competitive eating, especially not the hot dog eating contest. Look, I want to enjoy a hot dog. If I watch somebody fill their gullet with hot dogs until they're ready to throw up hot dogs everywhere, I may not want to eat my hot dog. So I'd rather enjoy my hot dog and not have the thing I like become, this implement of potential projectile vomiting. Okay. Next topic. Acrisure Ward, was there ever any resolution of the class action suit against the NFL for the Sunday ticket package? Are we ever going to be given an option to just purchase our favorite team's games? I've been talking about this recently, but I think to the extent people are asking about it, they want to know about it. The case is pending on appeal. The NFL is challenging the ruling from the jury that they did engage in antitrust violations by insisting that Sunday ticket be priced at a high enough level to get people to not buy it, so they would instead watch the games available for free in their markets on Fox and CBS. Fox and CBS hated Sunday ticket. The NFL priced it high enough that it would placate Fox and CBS, so people would say, I'm not spending all that money. I'd love to watch Vikings games in the Pittsburgh market, but I'm not spending all that money because I don't care about all the other games. And the Vikings are going to have 5 games in standalone windows anyway, so I don't need to buy Sunday ticket for that. I'm not doing it. So, look, the potential for future liability is in plain sight. They haven't changed their ways. They've done nothing. I mean, when they talked to Apple about taking over Sunday ticket, Apple wanted to make it, I believe, ridiculously cheaper, or wanted to provide an option to go team by team or game by game. Ideally, if the customer was right, the customer would have the option to just buy one game at a time, one weekend at a time, one team at a time, something other than if you want to watch any out-of-market games, you've got to pay for the privilege of watching every out-of-market game. That, according to the jury, who reached the decision roughly a year ago to the day, is an antitrust violation. And if the NFL ultimately loses, billions will be on the line. It will be a massive obligation for the league and its teams to satisfy if this thing goes haywire. And I think they believe their ace in the hole is the U.S. Supreme Court. If and when they get to the Supreme Court, they believe they'll get at least a 6-3 ruling, allowing them to keep doing whatever they've been doing and finding that everything they do is fine and dandy. And that's not a political comment. It's a political reality of the background, the mindset, the judicial history of the 9 members of the U.S. Supreme Court and the way those people were appointed. It's that simple. 6-3, the NFL will win. They'll spend a lot of money in legal fees to get there, but not nearly as much as if they lose that verdict and if they'd have to change their ways and completely reconfigure the way that out-of-market games are made available. But a better thing for consumers. And this is the model that makes the most sense. You've got your CBS and Fox games that are on the local over-the-air channels. And then on your cable package or your streaming package, you can flip around and all the other games are there. You're already paying for the services. You're not paying this extra exorbitant amount to only see those games. You put on FS1, there's a game. You put on USA, there's a game. You pull up ESPN Plus, there's a game. You pull up Peacock, there's a game. You can get all the games that you want without having to write that big check to what used to be DirecTV and is now YouTube every year. Stefan Peterson, what was the first NFL and non-NFL jersey you got and the first you actually spent money on? Now, the first non-NFL jersey I had was a nondescript blue jersey with 45 on it. And it wasn't tied to any team. It had no logo. It was just like from the Sears catalog, football jersey, blue with 45 on it. Or purple with 45 on it. I can't remember. But it wasn't an NFL jersey. Now, you know, even though I was an NFL fan from December of 1972 onward, it wasn't until 1987, because I was a Vikings fan in Steelers country. And back in those days, right, the local sporting goods stores only had Steelers stuff and some Browns stuff. We were kind of in that buffer zone between the two teams. So in 87, my mother found at a sporting goods store at the mall near where we lived, and I still have this thing to this day. It was purchased in 1987. It's a Vikings jersey with no logos or markings, no name on the back. It's number 32, which is cool because 32 was the number of the house we grew up in, and 32 was Franco Harris, who was always awesome, even though I wasn't a Steelers fan. I love Franco Harris. So that's a special thing to me that I will always keep. And it does have the NFL officially licensed product on the bottom, made by McGregor Sporting Goods. Got that in 1987. That's the first one I ever got. The first one I ever bought, I still have it. And I wore it back when we found out Randy Moss was fighting cancer. This is the Moss from the rookie season. Oh, man, it stinks. This is the Randy Moss jersey, and it's the, as you'll see, it's got the, if you wash it more than a certain number of times, there go the numbers. I don't know if that still happens with the replica jerseys, but yeah. Although this one needs to be washed. I think I haven't washed it because I don't want it to get any more weathered than it is. I probably need to put this in a frame at some point. Wouldn't it be great if I could get him to sign this? I'd love to get, hey, Randy, let's, next time you're in West Virginia, I'll come to you. Reach out, Randy, Florio at ProFootballTalk.com. I'll come to you, and I'd love for you to sign this thing. You get Randy Moss to sign this baby, and I'll put it in a frame, and I'll put it down in the barn. That's the first jersey I ever bought. 1998, 33 years old. I had never bought a jersey until that one. And there's a small one that my son used to wear when he was 2 years old. So we were the father and son, Randy Moss fans. But it was a big deal. And I'm so glad to know Randy's going to be back at ESPN this year on Sunday NFL Countdown. Bile duct cancer, any cancer is a big deal. But bile duct cancer is not an insignificant disease. But Randy apparently doing well enough to come back and work a full slate for ESPN. And, you know, he was from West Virginia. He landed with the Vikings. I remember how excited I was the day he was drafted. I saw he's slipping down one. It was even after the commissioner had stopped calling the names. It was out of the top 20. And I just knew when the Lions took Terry Fair, I believe, and really when the Titans took the receiver who caught the pass at the goal line in Super Bowl 34, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. When they took him, I think at 19, that's when I knew there'd be a straight shot to Moss. And it was great. Guy from West Virginia, best football player West Virginia's ever produced. Sorry, Sam Huff, but best West Virginia native to ever. I mean, God, the guy's one of the all-time greats. So anyway, Randy, I'm not just sucking up. I've always felt this way. I'd love to get him to sign this thing and frame it and put it in the barn. All right, one last question, very important question from Justin. Any Ferrari update? Okay, so once my wife gave me the okay, 2 levels. 1, you won't go to hell if you buy a Ferrari. 2, if you want to buy one, why not? And there was a used one up in Pittsburgh that caught my eye. And I was going to go look at it. And she said, well, wouldn't you want a new one? And I'm like, whoa. See, she knows me too well. She knows that I am cheap and that a Ferrari is expensive. I do have a funding plan that does not involve GoFundMe or anything else. I do have a plan. I'm going to keep it to myself for now, but I do have a funding plan for the Ferrari. If a separate revenue stream that may come to fruition, and if it does, it's Ferrari time. But I will say this. And I probably should send Gary the photo so he can add it so you can see it. I did splurge a little. Here's my son and I have been talking about getting a car that had manual transmission. We've been talking about it for a while. One of those, neat little with the big spoiler on the back, kind of loud and flashy, but fun. So I had a Ford truck for like 11 years and it had 35,000 miles on it. I rarely drive it. I mainly drive my Audi. We have the truck because like one day out of the year, we need a truck. Well, we got like between all of our various family members, 10 trucks around. If we need to borrow a truck, we can find a truck. So I traded my truck for a Honda Civic R, Type R. 6-speed, fun little car. And when you factor in the trade of a nice Ford truck that only had 35,000 miles on, you get a pretty good deal. I didn't have to pay very much. So my son and I now have this little Honda that we will tool around in. He does not yet know how to drive a Standard. That is one of the to-do list items for this week, so he can just take it. And I told him I want to get to the point where you can just jump in and go wherever you want to go. They're fun to drive. This car is great. I love driving it around. And that was my Ferrari compromise. Maybe at some point in the next year to 18 months, maybe there will be a Ferrari to replace or supplement the Honda. We're going to, you never know which cars are going to appreciate over time. This may be the last year they make the Type R Honda Civic, and you just never know. We may hang on to it for a while, let it become a collector's item. And I told him, hell, it'll be yours. Look around. Once I'm dead and gone, they're all going to be yours. On that happy note, that's it for today's PFTPM. I thought it was going to be a short one. Nope, not today. Once I get going, you never know how long I'm going to go. I do know this. I'm done for now. I'll be back on Thursday. No show on Friday, 4th of July holiday. Otherwise, content will be updated nonstop throughout the weekend at PFT. Thanks for some of your time. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. See you on Thursday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.